It was the final spring of 1945. Beneath the waves of the North Atlantic, steel monsters vanished into darkness, leaving behind no wreckage, no survivors, only silence. The ocean claimed them without ceremony, without witnesses, and for decades, no one could explain where they had gone. Welcome to Untold Dawn, where we uncover the hidden stories history tried to forget. When Adolf Hitler put a bullet through his skull in his Berlin bunker on the 30th of April, 1945, the Third Reich collapsed like a house built on sand. Within days, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over. Soldiers dropped their rifles. Cities burned themselves out. And across the Atlantic Ocean, hundreds of German submarines received a final transmission: cease all operations, surface immediately, and surrender to Allied forces. But not all of them obeyed. The Kriegsmarine, Germany's naval force, operated over 1,100 U-boats during World War II. These were not ordinary vessels. They were predators designed for one purpose: to hunt and kill Allied shipping across the Atlantic. From 1939 to 1945, German U-boats sank nearly 3,000 merchant ships and warships, killing tens of thousands of sailors. The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest continuous military campaign of the entire war, and the U-boat was its most feared weapon. These submarines were engineering marvels. The Type 7C, the most common model, measured just over 200 feet long and displaced 769 tons. Inside its cramped steel hull, 50 men lived and worked in conditions that defied human comfort. The air was thick with diesel fumes, body odor, and the metallic tang of fear. There were no showers, no privacy. Bunks were shared in shifts. Food rotted within weeks, and every moment spent beneath the surface was a gamble with death. But the men who served aboard them were volunteers. They knew the odds. By 1943, the life expectancy of a U-boat crew was measured in months, not years. Of the roughly 40,000 men who served in the U-boat fleet, 30,000 never came home. The survival rate was 25%. It was the highest casualty rate of any branch of the German military. Yet they kept diving, kept hunting, kept believing that their steel coffins would somehow turn the tide of war. They were wrong. By early 1945, the Allies had mastered anti-submarine warfare. Sonar, depth charges, long-range aircraft, escort carriers, and radar turned the hunter into the hunted. U-boats that once prowled freely were now being destroyed faster than Germany could build them. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat fleet and Hitler's chosen successor, knew the war was lost. On the 4th of May, 1945, he ordered all U-boats to cease combat operations and return to port. That order went out to approximately 150 operational submarines scattered across the Atlantic, the North Sea, the Baltic, the Arctic, and even the Indian Ocean. Most complied. They surfaced, raised black flags of surrender, and motored toward Allied-controlled harbors. British, American, and Canadian forces boarded them, arrested their crews, and catalogued every scrap of intelligence they could find. But dozens did not surrender. Some scuttled themselves rather than face capture. Captains flooded their ballast tanks, opened the hatches, and let the sea pour in. Crew members scrambled into lifeboats and watched their boats slide beneath the waves, taking with them codebooks, charts, and secrets. Others simply vanished. Radio contact ceased. No distress signals, no lifeboats, no wreckage, just empty ocean where a submarine had been hours before. The Allies were left with a problem. Hundreds of captured U-boats sat in ports across Europe. They were dangerous relics, filled with live torpedoes, unstable fuel, and classified technology. Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union each wanted access to Germany's advanced submarine designs. The Soviets took their share and sailed them east. The Americans seized several for study, including the Type 21 electroboat, the most advanced submarine in the world at the time. But most of the captured fleet remained in British hands, and the British had no intention of keeping them. Operation Deadlight began in November 1945. It was a plan as simple as it was brutal: tow the captured U-boats into the North Atlantic and sink them. No salvage, no museum pieces, just erase them from existence. Over the following 8 months, Royal Navy vessels towed 116 German submarines to a designated area northwest of Ireland, approximately 200 miles offshore. There they were destroyed. Some were used for target practice. Warships fired shells until the submarines broke apart and sank. Others were scuttled with explosives, their hulls blown open by demolition charges. A few were simply flooded and allowed to slip beneath the surface. The operation was efficient and cold. By February 1946, over 100 U-boats lay on the seabed, rusting in the darkness, their stories sealed inside twisted metal tombs. But that still left questions. What about the submarines that never surrendered? What about the ones that were confirmed missing but never found? And what about the 2 U-boats that surrendered thousands of miles away in Argentina months after the war ended? U-530 was a Type 9 C-40 submarine, one of the long-range models designed for extended patrols far from home. On the 13th of May, 1945, 9 days after Germany's surrender, it surfaced off the coast of Mar del Plata, Argentina. The crew raised a white flag and requested permission to come ashore. Argentine authorities were stunned. The war had been over for more than a week. What was a German submarine doing in South American waters? The captain, Otto Wermuth, offered little explanation. He claimed his boat had been on a routine patrol when the surrender order came through, and he had chosen to sail to Argentina rather than risk capture by Allied forces in the North Atlantic. He said nothing about where he had been, what cargo he carried, or why it took him so long to arrive. Argentine officials searched the boat. They found no contraband, no gold, no Nazi officials. Just a tired crew and a submarine that had clearly traveled a long distance. 2 months later, on the 17th of August, another U-boat appeared. U-977 surfaced in the same location, commanded by Heinz Schäfer. His story was nearly identical. He claimed he had been at sea when the war ended and had chosen to sail to Argentina. He insisted his journey was routine. No mission, no secrets, just a long voyage across the Atlantic. But the details did not add up. Both submarines had left European waters in early May. Both had enough fuel to reach South America, but only barely. Both crews looked healthy, well-fed, and organized. And both captains refused to explain their exact routes or whether they had made any stops along the way. Investigators pressed them. Where had they refueled? Had they encountered other U-boats? Were they part of a larger plan? The captains said nothing. They were detained, questioned, and eventually released. The submarines were handed over to the United States Navy, studied, and later scrapped. And the official record declared the matter closed. But questions lingered. Why did these 2 boats sail to Argentina instead of surrendering to the nearest Allied port? What were they carrying? And were they part of something larger? Rumors spread quickly. In the chaos of the final months of World War II, high-ranking Nazi officials had begun fleeing Germany. Some went to Spain. Others disappeared into the Vatican. And some, according to persistent reports, escaped to South America aboard German submarines. Argentina, with its sympathetic military government and large German expatriate community, was a natural destination. The rumors claimed that U-boats carried gold looted from occupied Europe, Nazi leaders fleeing justice, and crates of documents meant to be hidden forever. One name appeared repeatedly in these stories: Adolf Hitler himself. Despite overwhelming evidence of his suicide in Berlin, conspiracy theories insisted he had escaped. Some claimed he fled to a secret submarine base in Antarctica. Others said he boarded a U-boat and sailed to Argentina, where he lived out his days in hiding. The theories were far-fetched, unsupported by credible evidence, and contradicted by forensic analysis and eyewitness testimony. But they persisted because the idea of vanished U-boats and missing Nazis fit together too neatly to ignore. The Antarctic theory was the most elaborate. It centered on a real German expedition called the New Swabia Expedition, which took place in 1938 and 39. A German ship sailed to Antarctica, mapped portions of the coastline, and planted Nazi flags on the ice. The expedition was a territorial claim, nothing more. But in the years after the war, stories emerged claiming the Germans had built a secret base there, hidden beneath the ice, stocked with supplies, and accessible only by submarine. According to the theory, U-boats made secret trips to this base during the final months of the war, delivering cargo, personnel, and possibly Hitler himself. The base supposedly remained operational for years, a refuge for Nazi fugitives beyond the reach of Allied forces. Some versions of the story claimed the base was still there, buried under glaciers, waiting to be discovered. There was no evidence for any of it. No base was ever found. No records indicated such a mission existed, and the logistical challenges of building and supplying an Antarctic base with World War II technology were nearly insurmountable. But the theory survived because it explained the disappearance of certain U-boats. If they had not surrendered and had not been sunk, where else could they have gone? The truth was simpler and darker. Most of the missing U-boats had been destroyed. Allied forces sank them in the final months of the war, but their wrecks were never located. The Atlantic Ocean is vast and deep. A submarine lying on the seabed in 3,000 meters of water is nearly impossible to find without precise coordinates. Many wrecks remain undiscovered to this day, entombed in the cold darkness, their crews still inside. But some disappearances remained genuinely mysterious. U-853 was a supply submarine, a Type 14 nicknamed a milch cow because it refueled other U-boats at sea. It was last seen in February 1944 and vanished without a trace. No distress signal, no wreckage, no survivors. Its disappearance was attributed to Allied action, but no Allied unit claimed the kill. It simply ceased to exist. U-864, a Type 9 D2, was one of the most advanced long-range submarines Germany ever built. It departed Bergen, Norway, in February 1945 on a mission to the Indian Ocean. It carried supplies, spare parts, and possibly sensitive cargo. It never arrived. It never radioed for help. It was never seen again. Decades later, researchers speculated it had been sunk by a mine or a submarine, but no one knew for certain. Then there was U-1235, a Type 9 C-40 that surrendered in Loch Erebal, Scotland, in May 1945. British forces inspected it, seized its logbooks, and prepared it for Operation Deadlight. But during examination, intelligence officers discovered something unusual. The submarine's storage compartments had been recently emptied. Crates had been removed. Crew members were questioned, but they claimed ignorance. What had been in those compartments? Where had it gone? The questions went unanswered. The submarine was towed out to sea and sunk. Over the following decades, divers, historians, and treasure hunters became obsessed with finding lost U-boats. Some were motivated by historical preservation. Others sought rumored cargoes of gold, art, and looted wealth. The legend of the Nazi gold U-boat became a fixture of popular culture. Stories claimed certain submarines had been loaded with bullion, jewels, and priceless artifacts stolen from occupied territories, then sent on secret missions to hide the treasure before the Reich collapsed. One such submarine was U-869, reportedly sunk off the coast of South America in 1945 while carrying gold bars. Salvage teams searched for it. None found anything conclusive. Another was U-553, rumored to have carried a cargo of mercury, gold, and documents when it was intercepted and sunk by the United States Navy in 1944. Divers eventually located the wreck and found no treasure, only rusted steel and human remains. The ocean kept most of its secrets. In the 1980s and 90s, advancing sonar technology allowed researchers to map the seabed in greater detail. Dozens of previously unknown U-boat wrecks were discovered. Some were positively identified through serial numbers and structural features. Others remained unidentified, their origins lost to time. Each discovery added a piece to the puzzle, but the full picture remained incomplete. In 2004, a team of marine archaeologists located the wreck of U-1105 off the coast of Spain. The Type 7C submarine had been sunk by a British warship in April 1944. The wreck lay in 900 meters of water, its hull split open by depth charges. Inside, researchers found the remains of the 45 crew members still at their stations. The discovery was haunting. These men had died in an instant, trapped in the dark, crushed by pressure and seawater. Their bodies had been preserved by the cold, their faces frozen in final moments of terror. That same year, another wreck was found off the coast of North Carolina. It was initially thought to be an Allied merchant ship, but closer inspection revealed it was a German U-boat. Archival research identified it as U-852, sunk by the United States Coast Guard in May 1945, just days before Germany's surrender. The crew had survived the initial attack and attempted to surface, but a final barrage of gunfire killed them before they could abandon ship. The wreck was a time capsule, filled with personal effects, ammunition, and equipment exactly as it had been 70 years earlier. Each discovery reinforced the same grim reality. The U-boat war had been brutal, unforgiving, and absolute. Survival was rare. Death was common, and the ocean took everyone it could reach. But the mystery of the missing submarines persisted. How many U-boats were truly unaccounted for? The official count varied depending on the source. The German Navy recorded 1,162 U-boats commissioned during the war. Of those, 783 were lost to enemy action, accidents, or scuttling. 156 survived and were surrendered or captured. The remaining 223 were either incomplete, decommissioned, or lost without explanation. That final category was the ghost fleet, submarines that sailed into the unknown and never returned. Some were certainly sunk by Allied forces, but never confirmed. Others may have been victims of mechanical failure, collisions, or friendly fire. A few may have been scuttled by their crews in remote locations, their captains choosing to erase all evidence rather than surrender. And then there were the ones that defied explanation. U-465 was a Type 7C that departed Kiel, Germany, in April 1945, bound for Norway. It never arrived. No Allied forces reported sinking it. No wreckage was ever found. It vanished as if it had never existed. U-518, a Type 9C, was last heard from in May 1945, somewhere in the mid-Atlantic. It reported mechanical trouble and requested assistance. No help arrived. The submarine went silent. Decades later, its wreck was discovered off the coast of the Azores, resting in 4,000 meters of water. The cause of its sinking remained unclear. The deeper researchers dug, the more questions emerged. Some U-boats were reported sunk multiple times by different Allied forces, each claiming credit for the kill. Others were listed as missing, but later discovered to have survived the war and been scrapped under different names. The record-keeping was incomplete, contradictory, and sometimes deliberately obscured. The Soviet Union added another layer of confusion. After the war, the Soviets seized dozens of German submarines and integrated them into their fleet. Some were given new names and hull numbers. Others were studied and dismantled. A few were used for target practice. The Soviets released little information about which U-boats they took or what happened to them. For decades, Western researchers could only guess. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, archives opened and some answers emerged. But many records had been destroyed or lost, leaving gaps that will likely never be filled. One of the most tantalizing mysteries involved U-864, the long-range submarine that vanished en route to the Indian Ocean. In 2014, a team of researchers claimed to have found wreckage matching its description off the coast of Denmark. The find was controversial. Some experts argued the wreckage was too far north to be U-864. Others suggested it might be a different submarine entirely. DNA testing was proposed, but never carried out. The wreck remained unidentified, and the mystery unresolved. In 2018, another discovery captured headlines. A fishing trawler off the coast of Belgium snagged its nets on an underwater obstruction. Sonar scans revealed the outline of a submarine. Divers descended and confirmed it was a U-boat, remarkably well preserved, resting upright on the seabed. Initial identification suggested it was U-11, lost in 1944, but further examination revealed inconsistencies. The submarine's features did not match known specifications for U-11. Its hull numbers were missing or corroded beyond recognition. To this day, its true identity remains uncertain. These discoveries underscored a fundamental truth. The ocean is not a graveyard that reveals its dead easily. It is a vault, jealously guarding the stories it consumes. For every U-boat wreck found, dozens remain hidden, their steel bones scattered across the Atlantic floor, their secrets locked inside corroded hulls. But the Ghost Fleet was not just about missing submarines. It was about the men who crewed them. Young men, most in their early 20s, who climbed down into steel tubes and accepted that they might never see sunlight again. They were sons, brothers, husbands. They wrote letters home that never arrived. They carried photographs of loved ones they would never see again. And when the end came, it came fast. A depth charge detonated nearby, and the hull cracked like an egg. Water flooded in with the force of a hurricane. Men drowned in seconds, crushed by pressure or trapped in compartments that became coffins. There were no burials at sea for U-boat crews, no ceremonies, no flags. Just silence as the submarine descended into the abyss, carrying its crew into oblivion. For many families, there was no closure. A telegram arrived saying their son or husband was missing, presumed dead. No body, no grave, just absence. And for decades, that absence haunted them. Families clung to hope that maybe, somehow, their loved one had survived. Maybe he had escaped. Maybe he was living under a new name in South America. Maybe he was in a prisoner of war camp that no one knew about. The rumors of escaped U-boats fed that hope, however fragile. But as years became decades, hope turned to resignation. The missing were dead. The ocean had taken them, and the Ghost Fleet was their monument. In the 21st century, technology finally began to catch up with the mystery. Autonomous underwater vehicles, deepwater sonar, and satellite mapping allowed researchers to survey vast stretches of ocean floor that had been inaccessible before. Wrecks that had been lost for 70 years were suddenly visible. Each discovery brought new information, new stories, new grief. In 2020, a team of marine archaeologists located the wreck of U-581 off the coast of Italy. The Type 7C had been sunk by Allied bombers in May 1944. The wreck lay in 200 meters of water, its bow section torn away by an explosion. Inside, researchers found evidence of a hasty evacuation. Life jackets were missing, hatches were open. The crew had tried to escape. Whether any succeeded was unknown. Italian records mentioned survivors being picked up by a local fishing boat, but the names were never recorded. That same year, another wreck was found in the North Sea. It was initially believed to be a merchant vessel, but analysis revealed it was a U-boat, likely from the Type 2 class, the smallest submarines Germany built. These coastal submarines were used for training and patrol duties in shallow water. Most were scrapped or scuttled at the end of the war, but a few went missing. This wreck was one of them. Its identification remained tentative, but its discovery added another name to the slowly growing list of found submarines. Yet for every wreck found, the list of missing boats barely shrank. The Atlantic is 14 million square miles of water. The average depth is 3,300 meters. Locating a 70-meter-long submarine in that vastness is like finding a needle in a continent-sized haystack. And even when a wreck is found, identifying it can be nearly impossible. Corrosion erases markings. Explosions scatter debris. Time erases memory. Some researchers believe the Ghost Fleet will never be fully accounted for. Too much time has passed. Too many records were lost or destroyed. Too many witnesses are dead. The ocean has claimed its prize and will not give it back. But the search continues, driven not by treasure or glory, but by the simple human need to know, to give names to the dead, to close the chapters that history left open. And somewhere, deep beneath the waves, the Ghost Fleet remains. Rusting hulls rest on the seabed, slowly dissolving into the sediment. Schools of fish swim through shattered control rooms. Barnacles cling to torpedo tubes. And inside, in the dark, the bones of young men lie where they fell, still waiting for a homecoming that will never come. When the war ended, the world celebrated peace. Soldiers returned home, cities rebuilt, nations moved forward. But deep beneath the waves, another story began, one that history never fully answered. The U-boat ghost fleet is not a mystery of conspiracy or treasure. It is a tragedy of loss, a testament to the ocean's power to erase, and a reminder that some stories vanish not because they were hidden, but because no one survived to tell them. The steel monsters that terrorized the Atlantic are gone now. The men who commanded them are gone. The families who waited for them are gone. But the ocean remembers. And on quiet nights, when the wind dies and the water stills, you can almost hear them. The hum of diesel engines, the creak of pressure hulls, the silence of men who never came home. This was Untold Dawn. If history fascinates you, subscribe and join us as we uncover more forgotten truths.